Most people never realize this, but the instant you begin explaining yourself, something fractures beneath the surface. Not socially, not visibly, psychologically. The damage happens in silence, inside the minds of the people listening. Explaining feels civil, responsible, even intelligent. But power does not respond to intentions. It responds to signals. And explaining yourself is one of the clearest signals of weakness the human mind knows how to detect. The moment you explain, you are no longer standing on solid ground. You have stepped into defense. Defense is not neutral. Defense is reactive. And reaction is submission dressed as logic. You are no longer acting. You are responding. That single shift changes the entire hierarchy of the interaction, whether you notice it or not. From early life, you were conditioned into this behavior. Authority figures demanded reasons. Institutions rewarded justification. You were taught that clarity equals maturity, that transparency equals trust, that explaining yourself makes you reasonable. But power is not built on reason. Power is built on position. And position does not explain itself. It simply exists. When you explain, you silently confess that your decision is fragile, that it can be interrogated, that it needs to be accepted. You may not say these things out loud, but the human nervous system hears them immediately. People do not analyze explanations logically. They feel them instinctively, and what they feel is hesitation. This is where the discomfort begins, because most people believe they are explaining to be understood. In reality, they are explaining to be accepted. That distinction matters more than anything. Understanding does not require justification. Acceptance does. And the moment you seek acceptance, you place yourself beneath the person whose approval you want. Watch how this plays out in real life. You make a choice. Instead of letting it stand, you soften it. You add context. You narrate your thought process. You try to sound fair. You try to sound good. Each sentence feels harmless. But collectively, they dissolve authority. The more reasonable you sound, the more negotiable you become. Powerful individuals do not rush to be understood. They assume understanding will follow or is irrelevant. Their decisions are not invitations. They are statements. That is why silence often carries more weight than explanation. Silence communicates certainty. Explanation communicates doubt. Most people misunderstand this completely. They think conflict comes from being unclear. In reality, conflict comes from appearing unsure. Over-explaining signals that your internal hierarchy is unstable. It tells others you are still calibrating yourself against their reaction, that you are waiting to see if you will be challenged. And once that signal is sent, it cannot be reversed by more words. Additional explanation only confirms the initial weakness. You are now trapped inside a frame where the other person feels entitled to judge, question, and assess you. They may do it politely. They may even smile. But internally, the shift has already happened. This dynamic operates everywhere. In friendships, in relationships, in professional settings. You decline something and immediately justify it. You assert a boundary and then apologize for it. You take a position and then explain why it makes sense. Each time, you think you are smoothing things over. What you are actually doing is teaching others how to treat you. Because human beings are not listening to your explanation. They are measuring your certainty. And certainty never explains itself. The most unsettling part is this. The judgment doesn't form because your explanation is weak. It forms because you felt the need to explain it all. People do not think, that was a bad reason. They think, Why does this person need a reason? That question alone lowers you in their internal hierarchy. Once this pattern locks in, it spreads. People begin to expect explanations from you. They feel comfortable questioning you. They feel entitled to your reasoning. Your decisions no longer stand on their own. They require defense. And defense is a position you never want to occupy for long. This is the hidden weakness no one names. Because it feels like virtue. It feels like communication. It feels like maturity. But psychologically, it is exposure. You are revealing that you do not fully trust your own authority to stand without reinforcement. And once others sense that, they adjust accordingly. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. This is where power shifts, quietly, invisibly, and in most cases, permanently. Human beings are not egalitarian observers. They are hierarchists by instinct. Every interaction becomes a silent audit of status. Who leads, who reacts, who sets direction, who adjusts. This assessment never stops. And it does not rely on logic or fairness. It relies on signals. Subtle cues that reveal certainty, restraint, emotional control, and self-perceived rank. Explaining yourself disrupts those signals immediately. When you explain, you fracture the image of certainty. You introduce movement where there should have been stillness. You suggest that your decision exists in a negotiable space. Psychologically, this is catastrophic for authority. Because authority is not built on being right. It is built on appearing unmovable. The moment you explain, you open a door that was previously sealed. You imply that your choice was not self-contained, that it requires external confirmation to hold its weight. Without saying a word, you communicate. This can be debated. And the human mind responds to that invitation instinctively. The other person steps into a role they did not previously occupy. The role of evaluator. They may not verbalize it. They may not even realize it. But internally, their posture changes. Their attention sharpens. They begin listening not to understand, but to assess. To find inconsistencies. To measure how far they can push. Your explanation does not disarm them. It empowers them. This is why high-status individuals communicate differently. They do not narrate their internal process. They do not walk others through their reasoning unless it serves a strategic purpose. They state outcomes, conclusions, decisions. Their authority is embedded in the assumption that their reasoning already exists, whether or not it is shared. They do not prove their thinking. They presume it. And that presumption is felt immediately. When someone explains, the listener relaxes. Not in comfort, in control. They settle into judgment. They listen with one silent question looping beneath the surface. Does this hold up? In contrast, when someone states without justification, the listener's nervous system reacts differently. There is friction, a slight tension, a recalibration. They must now decide how to position themselves relative to certainty they did not create. This is the difference between interrogation and alignment. Explaining invites interrogation. Statements invite response. This is why explanation rarely resolves conflict. It prolongs it. Every reason you add creates another surface to test. Every clarification becomes another pressure point. The listener senses permission to probe, to resist, to ask for more. Not because they are hostile, but because the structure of the interaction now allows it. Powerful individuals do not fear being misunderstood in the short term. They understand that clarity is less important than frame control. They allow ambiguity to sit. They allow others to adapt. They do not rush to rescue their image. Machiavellian strategy has always recognized this principle. Power is not sustained through transparency. Transparency is exposure. Power is sustained through managing perception, deciding what is revealed, when and to whom. Explanation is a form of overexposure. It empties the room of mystery. It floods the space with information that weakens leverage. When you clarify unnecessarily, you are not helping the other person understand you. You are helping them understand how to challenge you. This is why decisive individuals unsettle people, especially quiet decisiveness. Loud certainty can be dismissed as ego. Quiet certainty cannot. It feels grounded. Final. It leaves no obvious handle to grab. And when people encounter that, they instinctively adjust their behavior. They speak differently. They push less. They accept more quickly. Or they retreat entirely. This recalibration happens below consciousness. No one announces, "I respect you less now." No one says, "You just lost status." It happens silently. A fraction of a second where their nervous system categorizes you as someone who needs to explain, rather than someone whose actions explain themselves. Once that categorization occurs, it rarely reverses. People begin to challenge you more. Question your decisions. Ask for justification as a matter of routine. What changed was not your competence, but your perceived position. You moved from authority to participant, from leader to negotiator, from solid to adjustable. And the most dangerous part is that you often assist in this downgrade without realizing it. You think you are being helpful, polite, reasonable, but socially, you are conceding ground you will not easily reclaim. Power is maintained by those who understand when silence is stronger than speech. When brevity is dominance. When stating is superior to explaining. This is the moment respect begins to dissolve, not with confrontation, not with insult, but with the subtle realization that you can be questioned. And once that realization settles in, the hierarchy has already shifted. The shift doesn't announce itself. There is no confrontation, no visible rupture. No moment you can point to and say, "This is when it happened." There is only a pause. Someone questions your decision. The familiar pressure rises immediately. The reflex to explain activates on its own. The instinct to justify, to soften, to demonstrate reasonableness begins pushing forward. This reflex has been trained into you for years. It feels responsible. Socially correct. And then you stop. You do not rush to fill the space. You do not defend. You do not offer context. You answer briefly, or you don't answer at all. You allow the silence to remain exactly where it is. You let it settle. This is where power shifts. The other person experiences something unexpected. They were prepared for a back and forth, for reassurance, for negotiation disguised as discussion. They anticipated control through dialogue. Instead, they encounter stillness, emotional containment, a closed loop. Their mind falters for a moment. Silence forces effort. It removes guidance. Without your explanation, they are left alone with their own interpretation, their own uncertainty, their own risk assessment. The psychological labor quietly transfers from you to them. And most people are not comfortable in that position. They begin filling the gap themselves. Internally first. They wonder if they miscalculated, if they overstepped, if there is information they do not have. They replay their words. They reconsider their tone. What feels like confusion on the surface is actually recalibration. They are adjusting their position relative to yours. This is not about intimidation. It is about gravity. When you stop explaining, you stop making yourself accessible in ways that weaken your frame. You stop inviting entry into your internal reasoning. You close doors that were never meant to be open. Power often emerges from limited access, from being slightly opaque, from refusing to make your inner world available for inspection. Transparency feels virtuous, but it is strategically naive. When others can easily read you, they can anticipate you. When they can anticipate you, they can manage you. When you stop explaining, you become difficult to map. This difficulty creates restraint in others. They speak more carefully because they are unsure where the lines are. They test less often because testing requires feedback. And you are no longer providing it. Not because you are hostile, but because you are contained. This distinction matters. Aggression provokes resistance. Restraint produces adjustment. Your calm becomes disorienting. Your brevity feels deliberate. Your silence acquires density. The conversation begins to orbit you rather than move through you. You no longer carry the burden of resolution. They do. People feel this shift physically before they understand it cognitively. A tightening, the pause, a subtle change in posture. They may label it as confidence, or detachment, or authority. But what they are responding to is self-possession. You are no longer negotiating your position. You are occupying it. Over time, the pattern becomes familiar to them. They learn that questioning you does not yield explanations. That probing does not produce concessions. That discomfort is not rewarded with reassurance. And so their behavior changes without you ever asking it to. They comply more readily, or they disengage. Both outcomes preserve your control. This is how influence actually works. Not through persuasion, not through force, but through the disciplined refusal to over-participate. You let others reveal themselves through how they react to your boundaries. You let silence expose their expectations. And once this dynamic takes hold, it does not require maintenance. It sustains itself. Because the moment you stop explaining, you stop positioning yourself beneath anyone's judgment. And that is the moment control changes hands. When you stop explaining yourself, the external consequences appear first. But they are not the real change. They are symptoms. The true shift happens internally, where identity is formed and reinforced. At first, you notice something subtle. You no longer feel the same urgency to respond. The same tightness when questioned. The same internal scramble to assemble reasons, context, justification. Decisions no longer feel fragile. They feel complete. Finished. You are not preparing to defend them because, psychologically, they are no longer on trial. This is the end of performance. Most people are exhausted not because they act too much, but because they manage too much. They monitor reactions, anticipate objections, preempt judgment. Every explanation leaks energy. Every justification is a small act of submission dressed up as communication. When you stop explaining, that energy returns to you. You stop managing how you are perceived. You stop correcting misunderstandings that were never accidental. You stop engaging in conversations that only exist to test your position. And what replaces that effort is something most people have never felt: internal stillness. People respond to this immediately because they always have. They simply did not before because you never allowed the dynamic to form. Some will resist. Predictably. These are not neutral observers. These are individuals who benefited from your accessibility, from your transparency, from your willingness to explain yourself into flexibility. They will feel the loss before they understand it. And because they cannot articulate it cleanly, they will reach for character attacks. You have changed, they will say. You are cold, distant, difficult, arrogant. These words are not descriptions. They are alarms, signals that an old hierarchy has been disrupted, that access has been removed, that leverage no longer exists. People rarely protest when power shifts in your favor without cost to them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. It is confirmation. Others will do the opposite. They will adapt. Quietly, efficiently. They will accept your boundaries without pushing. They will adjust their tone. Shorten their questions. Stop negotiating. Not because you asked them to, but because your behavior no longer invites negotiation. And this is when something unexpected happens. Life becomes quieter. Not empty. Not isolated. Quieter. Fewer arguments that go nowhere. Fewer conversations designed to drain clarity. Fewer emotional entanglements disguised as dialogue. You are no longer carrying other people's expectations on your back. This silence is not loneliness. It is order. This is the identity shift most people never make, because it requires letting go of something deeply ingrained, the belief that being understood is safety, that if others understand your reasons, they will treat you fairly. That explanation earns respect. It does not. Understanding is optional. Respect is not. And the two are not correlated. Power does not require that others see inside you. It requires that you remain intact without their agreement. Solidity is not loud. It does not argue. It does not convince. It does not defend itself against every raised eyebrow. It holds. When you stop explaining, you stop framing yourself as someone whose actions exist for public approval. You exit the marketplace of opinions. You no longer submit your decisions for review. And this does something profound to how you experience yourself. You stop waiting for permission, waiting for alignment, waiting for validation that may never come. You begin to act from a position that feels internal, anchored, self-contained. This is not confidence. Confidence is emotional. This is orientation. People sense this difference instantly, because orientation determines behavior under pressure. Someone who explains is easy to move, easy to redirect, easy to destabilize. Someone who does not is friction. They do not absorb force. They resist it passively by not accommodating it. This is why power stabilizes when explanation ends. You are no longer rising and falling based on reactions. You are not adjusting your identity in real time. You are not negotiating your worth through language. You are simply occupying your position and letting others decide how they will relate to it. Most will adjust downward. A few will remove themselves. Both outcomes simplify your world. And this brings us to the final law, the one most people sense but rarely articulate. Those who need to explain themselves are still asking for permission. Those who don't already have authority. Authority is not claimed. It is assumed. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, your power doesn't just increase. It settles. It becomes permanent.